Africa will never be ready. I'll laugh. The WSC president, Ibrahim Traoré's recording device captured everything. 10 minutes later, the most powerful man in world sports would resign. The executive boardroom of the World Sports Council in Geneva reeked of arrogance. Crystal chandeliers illuminated mahogany tables where the fate of global athletics was decided. Photos of every global champions tournament since 1930 decorated the walls, silent witnesses to decades of power. Vincent Moreau, WSC president for 8 years, stood at the head with unshakable confidence. Around him sat executives from every continent, though everyone knew Africa's representative was merely decorative. "Gentlemen," Moreau began, his French accent dripping condescension, "we must discuss the 2038 tournament bids." The screen displayed candidates, Australia, China, and a joint bid from 7 African nations, Nigeria, South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, Kenya, Ghana, and surprisingly, Burkina Faso. The African bid, Moreau said, barely containing laughter, is ambitious. But let's be realistic. Africa lacks infrastructure, security, and frankly, the sophistication for such an event. Several executives chuckled. Kwame Asante, the African representative, remained silent, rage burning behind calm eyes. South Africa hosted successfully in 2010, Asante reminded them quietly. "A disaster," Moreau shot back. "Noisemakers, half-empty stadiums, security nightmares. We're still recovering." Everyone knew this was false. South Africa 2010 had been highly successful, but truth had never been WSC's strength. But here's what shocked everyone. 3 floors below, in a maintenance room, Ibrahim Traoré sat surrounded by monitors. He'd arrived in Geneva 3 days earlier, not as president, but as a documentary filmmaker covering the WSC meetings. His crew were actually Burkina Faso's best tech specialists. For 3 days, they'd filmed everything under the guise of making a promotional video. The WSC, eager for positive publicity, had given them unprecedented access. They never suspected the real purpose. "Are you getting this?" Ibrahim asked Aminata, his tech specialist. "Every word, Mr. President. It's streaming to our secure servers." Back in the boardroom, Moreau continued his insults. "The African bid mentions uniting the continents and inspiring youth. Very touching, but this is business, not charity." "Actually," Asante interjected, "the bid includes $60 billion in infrastructure investment, with stadiums already under construction." "Paper promises," Moreau interrupted. "Where would Africa get $60 billion? From selling resources to us? From aid money meant for food?" The racism was breathtaking. Even some executives looked uncomfortable. "Besides," Moreau continued, "there are security concerns, political instability, health risks. Can you imagine asking star athletes to play where they might catch diseases? That's completely false and you know it," Asante said through gritted teeth. "Africa is unstable. That's not racism, it's reality. Their tournament dream is just a dream. They need to accept it." That's when everything changed. Ibrahim stood up, straightened his suit, and headed upstairs. His film crew followed, cameras rolling. Security tried stopping him. "Authorized personnel only." "I am authorized," Ibrahim said calmly. "I'm the president of Burkina Faso, and I have something the WSC needs to see." The guards reached for their radios, but Ibrahim's team was already setting up cameras. The boardroom door opened just as Moreau was saying, "Africa's dream is just a fantasy." "A fantasy?" Ibrahim asked, walking in with cameras rolling. "Or a nightmare for those profiting from Africa's exclusion?" Moreau's face cycled through confusion, recognition, and anger. "President Traoré, this is a private meeting. You can't just "I can and I did," Ibrahim said calmly. "Just like you can dismiss an entire continent without proper review." He pulled out a tablet and connected it to the room's screen. "Gentlemen, let me show you something interesting." The screen filled with documents that made everyone gasp. "These are financial records from the Qatar tournament," Ibrahim announced. "The ones supposedly destroyed. They show $50 million in bribes to WSC executives, including you, Mr. Moreau." The room erupted. Executives stood, phones appeared. "This is fabricated. Moreau shouted. From your own servers, Ibrahim interrupted. Retrieved by the same unsophisticated Africans you mock. Your security is so poor we walked right in. The screen changed, showing bank records. Here's where it gets interesting. The bribe money came from projects using African migrant workers. Thousands died, so WSC profited from African deaths while denying Africa opportunity. Hans Moller, the European representative, stood up. If this is true, it's true, Ibrahim confirmed. 10 terabytes of evidence, emails, transfers, recordings. He clicked again. Moreau's voice filled the room from a recording. Africans can complain all they want. They'll never get a tournament while I'm president. They don't pay enough. But Ibrahim wasn't finished yet. That's out of context. Moreau stammered. Is it? Should I play the recording where you call African athletes talented monkeys? Or where you say African federations are too stupid to organize a children's party? Several executives headed for the door. Wait, Ibrahim commanded. You're all implicated. Moeller, you took $3 million for the Russia bid. Chen, you sold Asia's votes. Rodriguez, you've been stealing from South American development funds. He looked around the room. The difference between Africa and you isn't sophistication. It's that we're building something clean while you protect corruption. That's when Asante stood up. President Traoré, how long have you known? 2 years, Ibrahim replied. We've gathered evidence for 2 years. Every racist comment, every blocked opportunity, every stolen development fund. Why reveal it now? Because, Ibrahim smiled grimly, I wanted Moreau to say on record that Africa's dream is just a dream. Now I can prove it's not Africa dreaming. It's WSC having nightmares. The most shocking part was coming. Ibrahim showed his phone screen. This conversation is being broadcast, not publicly yet, but to every major sponsor. Coca-Cola, Nike, Emirates, Samsung. They're watching their brands being associated with corruption and racism. Moreau lunged for the phone, but Ibrahim pulled back. You have 10 minutes. Either you resign and WSC commits to fair review, or this goes public. It won't just end careers, it will end WSC as we know it. You're bluffing, Moreau said weakly. Ibrahim's phone rang. On speaker, President Traoré, this is John Harrison, CEO of Coca-Cola. We've seen the stream. If Mr. Moreau doesn't resign immediately, we're pulling our $500 million sponsorship. Another call. This is Nike. Same message. One by one, every sponsor called with the same ultimatum. But here's what nobody expected. While this happened in Geneva, something extraordinary occurred across Africa. Giant screens in public squares showed a countdown. 9 minutes until truth about WSC. In Lagos, millions gathered. In Cairo, stadiums filled. In Johannesburg, rival fans stood together. But it wasn't just Africa. In Brazilian favelas, kids watched on phones. In Parisian suburbs, African immigrants gathered around laptops. Everywhere football meant hope rather than money, people watched. Back in the boardroom, Moreau desperately negotiated. If I resign, this ends. Recordings don't go public. That depends, Ibrahim said, on what happens next. He pulled up a presentation. This is the real African bid. 7 countries, but continental effort. Every African nation contributing. Stadiums built with African labor and materials. Infrastructure serving communities after the tournament. The images were stunning. State-of-the-art facilities incorporating African architecture. Training centers becoming schools. Transport systems for daily use, not just tourists. This is impossible, Miller said weakly. Is it, or just different from your expectations? You see Africa as poor because you've been stealing from us. But look, financial projections appeared. African billionaires committed $25 billion. China offered $20 billion in zero-interest loans. African diaspora crowdfunded $8 billion in 6 months. The remaining, money WSC stole from African sports over 20 years. That's our money, Moreau protested. No, it's money allocated for African development that you stole. Either return it or explain to Swiss authorities why WSC is actually a criminal organization. The 10 minutes expired. Moreau looked around, seeing no support. I resign, he whispered, louder, on camera. Facing Ibrahim's phone, I, Vincent Moreau, resign as WSC president effective immediately, and NUSC will conduct fair, transparent review of the African bid and return the stolen development funds. The moment he finished, Africa exploded in celebration. Ibrahim sent a message. Countdown screens changed to show Moreau's resignation. In Burkina Faso, people danced. In Nigeria, bells rang. In South Africa, vuvuzelas created symphonies of joy. Within hours, executives turned on each other, each trying to save themselves. The corruption was deeper than even Ibrahim knew. They deliberately scheduled African matches to conflict with European leagues, assigned worst referees to African games, manipulated draws ensuring African teams faced toughest opponents. But the most shocking revelation came from Moreau, trying to save himself. There's more. The 2010 World Cup in South Africa, Moreau and others deliberately sabotaged coverage, paid broadcasters to emphasize empty seats, highlight problems while ignoring similar issues elsewhere. They wanted it to fail. This confession went viral. The response was volcanic. Football legends united like never before. Didier Drogba posted, "We always knew." Every African who wore their national shirt with pride, despite WSC's discrimination, knew. Thank you, President Traoré. Samuel Eto'o was more direct. WSC stole African dreams and sold them. Today we take them back. But the most powerful response came from unexpected source. Pelé, from his hospital bed. Football belongs to everyone. WSC forgot. Africa remembered. Within a week, interim WSC leadership announced the 2038 tournament bidding would restart with transparent criteria. But Ibrahim had another surprise. At a press conference in Ouagadougou, standing beside African football legends, he announced the African bid isn't just about hosting. It's about redefining sports purpose. We propose 50% of profits go to grassroots development globally. We propose carbon-neutral infrastructure for community use after. We propose tickets priced so locals can attend, not just wealthy tourists. The response was overwhelming. Countries planning bids withdrew, supporting Africa. Player associations endorsed the African bid. Even European clubs, recognizing change, announced support. But Moreau, facing criminal charges, made one desperate attempt. In an interview, he said Traoré is destroying a democratic institution. WSC worked for decades. Ibrahim's response was brilliant. He invited Moreau to a village match in Burkina Faso, where children played with balls made from plastic bags. Surprisingly, Moreau came, perhaps hoping to salvage dignity. What he saw changed him. Children playing with pure joy despite having nothing. Communities gathering, creating atmosphere from nothing. A 90-year-old woman who'd never missed a match. A young boy asked Moreau, "Sir, will we ever see the tournament here?" Moreau looked at Ibrahim, then back at the boy. "Yes," he said, voice breaking. "Yes, you will." That moment, captured on camera, became the turning point. 6 months later, WSC announced Africa would host 2038. The announcement wasn't in Geneva, but in Ouagadougou, where street football that produced legends was celebrated. Ibrahim spoke last. "This tournament won't be the most expensive, but it will be the most honest. Every stadium will become a school or hospital. Every road will connect isolated communities. Every moment will inspire those who need hope most." The real transformation was in WSC itself. Corruption investigations led to 100 arrests. The structure was reformed with transparency, term limits, equal representation. Stolen development funds were recovered, almost $2 billion, and redistributed. African leagues suddenly had resources. Youth academies sprouted. Women's football received equal funding. But resistance remained. European clubs complained African leagues were becoming too strong. A secret meeting in Madrid discussed boycotting the African tournament. Ibrahim was ready. He called the biggest stars, Kylian Mbappe, with Cameroonian heritage, released a statement, "I will play in Africa 2038, with or without my federation. Football owes Africa everything." Messi said, "The joy in African children playing football reminds me why I started. Boycotting that joy means boycotting football itself." The boycott collapsed immediately. As 2038 approached, something beautiful happened. Tournament preparation became continental celebration. Egyptian engineers helped Nigerian stadiums. South African logistics organized Moroccan transport. Burkina Faso's technology provided security. The infrastructure development was revolutionary. Every construction site became a training center. By completion, each stadium had produced 500 skilled workers. Transportation connected not just venues but communities. Isolated villages got roads. Farmers reached markets. Children reached schools. The legacy-first policy meant every facility had post-tournament purpose before construction. Stadiums becoming schools and hospitals. Training centers becoming community facilities. Media centers becoming tech hubs. Western media, desperate for failure stories, found transformation instead. CNN found Nigerian former militants, now engineers, building a stadium that would become a university. "We once destroyed," one said. "Now we build." BBC discovered Moroccan stadium construction created 50,000 jobs for women. Not cleaning or cooking, welding, designing, managing. "We're building more than stadiums," one engineer said. "We're building possibilities for daughters." The opening ceremony redefined everything. Instead of expensive productions, young African artists were chosen through auditions in refugee camps, villages, slums. The ceremony began in darkness. One child lit a phone torch, then another. Then 80,000 lights filled the stadium, construction workers, volunteers, everyone who built the dream. The lights formed patterns, Africa's map, then the world, then a football. The message from many one, from chaos, beauty, from darkness, light. Football legends gave the child gifts. Pelé's 1970 ball, Maradona's jersey, via hologram. African legends added medals. The child placed them in a traditional pot and lit a fire, not burning the past but transforming it. The smoke formed shapes, every tournament trophy dissolving into hands offering a ball forward, not up. The tournament itself was magic. Nigeria beat Brazil 4-3 in an opener, remembered as one of football's greatest matches, but the result was secondary to atmosphere. Fans sang together, shared food, exchanged jerseys. Police prepared for trouble, ended up joining dances. When Germany lost to Cameroon, German fans joined Cameroon's victory parade. When Argentina lost to Egypt, Messi spent hours signing autographs for Egyptian children. The final was Nigeria-Morocco. Fans wore split jerseys, half each country. Both anthems were sung equally. When Morocco won, Nigerian players carried Moroccan players in celebration. The closing ceremony was simple. Children from every nation played while leaders watched. No speeches, just children playing as sun set over Africa. Ibrahim stood watching with other African leaders. "We did it," Morocco's king said. "No," Ibrahim corrected. "We began it. The real victory is what happens next." What happened next was transformation. Stadiums became schools and hospitals as promised. Infrastructure served communities. Youth trained during construction became engineers building Africa's future. African children no longer dreamed of escaping to Europe. They dreamed of succeeding at home. African players chose African clubs. African innovations led global football. The financial model, 50% to grassroots, was adopted permanently. Betting companies were banned from football. Tickets were priced for locals. The game returned to people. 5 years later, Ibrahim was asked about that moment when Moreau said those words. He said Africa's dream was just a dream. He was right. It was just a dream. Then we woke up and built it. But more importantly, we showed that dreams aren't meant to be just dreams. They're meant to be blueprints. The documentary's last image wasn't celebration. It was a refugee camp child playing with a real football for the first time, provided by tournament legacy funds. She practiced the winning goal move repeatedly, failing, trying, improving. In her eyes, determination, joy, belief. Because she'd seen what was possible when dreams were taken seriously. She'd watched a continent transform dreams into world-changing reality. Vincent Moreau had said, Africa's tournament dream was just a dream. 10 minutes later, he resigned in disgrace. 10 years later, Africa had redefined sports. Forever after, dreams would never be dismissed as just dreams again, because Africa proved that dreams backed by courage, unity, and refusal to accept limitations become destiny, and that destiny wasn't just Africa's, it was humanity's. Because when one rises, all rise. When one dreams and achieves, all can dream and achieve. The ball kicked in Lagos had traveled the world and landed in the future. A future where excellence wasn't exclusive, where joy wasn't monetized, where dreams weren't just dreams, but promises waiting to be kept.